All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining this afternoon. This is the second webinar of the Let's Talk About Resilience webinar series. This webinar series is a partnership between the GTM Research Reserve, the Northeast Florida Regional Council, and the WJCT's ADAPT program. This webinar series focuses on local and regional resiliency efforts, where invited speakers will present and share their efforts in helping communities around the area prepare for impacts of sea level rise and coastal flooding. My name is Abigail Kuhn, and I am the collaboration specialist at the GTM Research Reserve. And let me just share my screen here for a few quick items. All right. So like I mentioned, this webinar series is a partnership between these entities. Today, let's just go over a few housekeeping items on Zoom. I know we've been at this for quite some time now, but again, please keep your audio muted if you're not speaking to help prevent any background noises, any distractions. You are also able to click on the participants box to view other participants on this webinar. And then today we will also be using the chat box to administer questions, and we will moderate those following both presentations today. This slide here is a view of the flyer for this series. We had a great first webinar back in October of 2021. That recording is available. If you did not get an email with a link to the recording, please send me another email and I can make sure that you get a copy of that. We had some great projects discussed at that webinar. Then we have today's exciting webinar, and our next one will be in March, talking about the Army Corps' South Atlantic Coastal Studies. So stay tuned for that exciting webinar. And now I will pass it over to Farah from the Northeast Florida Regional Council to give us a few words of welcome from the Regional Council.
Thanks, Abby. My name is Farah Ilami, and I'm the Regional Resiliency Manager for the Northeast Florida Regional Council. And I'd like to welcome everyone to this webinar. I'm really excited for this series. This is my first one because I just recently started in this position. So I am looking forward to helping out with the rest of these webinars for this series, and looking forward to learning from all of the speakers and and joining in the panel that will be in our last one. So thank you again for joining us, and thanks Abby for letting me join in today.
Thank you. We're excited to have you on board and helping out with the rest of the series. All right, so today's webinar focus, I'll flip back to the previous slide real quick, is building flood resilience into urban systems. And we have two great speakers today. Our first speaker today will be Ehas from Groundwork Jacksonville. Kay joined Groundwork Jacksonville as the CEO in September of 2017. Since then, she has been relentless in her pursuit of achieving Jacksonville's 100-year-old vision of an emerald necklace of trails, linear parks, and restored creeks that encircle the urban core. Under Kay's leadership, Groundwork Jacksonville became the City of Jacksonville's nonprofit partner in designing the 30-mile Emerald Trail that will connect 14 of our city's historic urban neighborhoods to the downtown area and link to schools and parks. Additionally, in collaboration with the city, Kay led the development of the plan to restore McCoy's Creek to a naturally meandering channel design that will improve flooding, water quality, and habitat for fish and wildlife. Kay earned a master's degree in communication and graduated with distinction from the University of Florida. And after earning her undergraduate degree in social welfare, Kay was a volunteer in Service to America, where she worked with public housing tenant associations and a low-income senior citizens group. Kay has 15 years of experience in local government, working with the city council and a constitutional office, most recently as the chief administrative officer for the Duval County property appraiser. So she has a lot of experience, and we're excited to learn from her efforts today. And Kay, I will stop sharing and pass it over to you.
Let me unmute myself and share my screen. Everybody see that? Okay. So good afternoon, and thank you for having me to share how Groundwork Jacksonville's Emerald Trail is contributing to urban resiliency. I'm going to give you a brief background on who Groundwork Jacksonville is, the geography we're working in, and our demographics. Then I'll share our McCoys Creek Restoration Project, a bit about our other current projects, and a couple will be starting soon. So in 2013, the former mayor set out to bring a groundwork trust to Jacksonville specifically because the city had struggled with cleaning up its urban land and waterways. We have both federal and local key partners. The National Park Service and the Environmental Protection Agency founded Groundwork USA in the 1990s to focus on urban parks and green spaces and brownfields. And these two federal agencies provide capacity building funds through Groundwork USA to start up local groundwork trusts. We have ongoing relationships with both agencies, and the equity work we are engaged in as a result of the McCoys Creek project is included in the EPA's Southeast Region Equitable Development and Action brochure. The city of Jacksonville is, of course, our key local partner because almost everything we do is on city-owned land and because we need local public dollars to get it done. Key to our mission is engaging communities as our partners in project design and in the greater goal of neighborhood revitalization. So Groundwork's mission is to literally clean up the ground and water in underserved neighborhoods and create fabulous public spaces that contribute to urban neighborhood revitalization, including shared prosperity, providing green infrastructure that makes us more resilient and provides habitat for wildlife. And as you know, it's proven that connecting people to the outdoors, to nature, and to others improves our overall well-being. Groundwork Jacksonville raised private funds to develop the trail plan that you see here. The Jacksonville City Council adopted the Trail Master Plan in March of 2019. The numbers indicate the order in which the segments will be built. Groundwork and the city have a public-private partnership, and Groundwork takes the lead on community engagement and design, including raising design funds. When complete, as Abigail said, the Emerald Trail will be 30 miles of contiguous trails and linear parks and includes the ecological restoration of McCoys and Hogan's Creeks. As you can see, the Emerald Trail is a major connector, connecting neighborhoods to each other, downtown and the river, and to schools and parks. There are an additional 13 schools and 17 parks within 3 blocks of the trail. Segment 1 is currently under construction. Segment 2 is under design. This is Hogan's Creek. And then this is McCoys Creek, the main stem, and then it branches this way. So Groundwork's geographical area is the 24 square miles that contain Jacksonville's urban neighborhoods. 71% of residents living in the Emerald Trail neighborhoods are low income, and 35% are living in poverty. 75% are people of color. However, residents living in the neighborhood bordering the western half of McCoys Creek are in even worse shape. The neighborhood has been declining for decades. The percentage of those living below the poverty line increased 11%, and unemployment increased 7% between 2000 and 2017. McCoys Creek is 3 miles of stream and 140 acres. The purple line on your right represents 930 linear feet of creek that's buried underground. The green parcels are city-owned parkland. The area from the river to I-95 is the Brooklyn neighborhood. Once an African-American neighborhood, highways and road widenings destroyed much of it along with urban renewal, and the neighborhood today is 98% white. The area from the highway to King Street is considered Mixontown, and then west of that is considered North Riverside. There are almost 30 acres of city-owned parkland in this area right here, and that's what we call the branches, which are the creek's headwaters. The creek was straightened, moved north, and bulkheaded during the City Beautiful movement in 1929. That project built a road, McCoy's Creek Boulevard, in part of what was the creek's floodplain. So McCoy's Creek has been the #1 priority on the city's local mitigation strategy for decades due to flooding. The ecological restoration of the creek was actually Groundwork's first design project that we began in July of 2018. The creek is polluted, it floods even during normal rainfall events, and the infrastructure is failing. The photo on the right shows trusses that are there to hold up the bulkhead. It has a B map for fecal matter, and most people do not even know it exists as it's not accessible or visible for most of its 3 miles. The western part of the creek has the almost 30 acres of city-owned parkland, and this little playground is the only recreational amenity in that 30 acres. Every one of North Riverside's recreational amenities were taken away and replaced with retention ponds over the years that did not solve the flooding problem. So the Emerald Trail is going through neighborhoods that for generations have been excluded from most governmental and non-governmental socioeconomic and infrastructure investments. Additionally, the placement of inter and intrastate highways have negatively impacted many of these historically Black neighborhoods, disconnected communities, decimated parks, and reduced mobility options and access. Residents haven't had a seat at the decision-making table historically, and there is a lot of distrust. We engage neighborhoods as our design partners. These are their neighborhoods, not ours, and residents are the experts on their neighborhoods. We started the McCoy's Creek project with visioning sessions with neighborhood residents as well as businesses and developers. We spent the most time throughout the design process with residents as we were working with them again for almost 3 years. We also formed a McCoy's Creek task force to guide us and our consultants through the restoration design. 3 residents serve on that task force, as well as environmental nonprofits such as the Riverkeeper, city staff, the Area Business Council. The bottom 2 photos come from a creek festival we held to share and get input on the preliminary design and talk about the history and function of the creek. And over 150 residents attended the festival. What we learned early in the project through surveys was that residents wanted to learn how to be better leaders and mentors to help improve their neighborhood. As a result, their feedback, excuse me, our community engagement coordinator designed CREST, which stands for Community Restoration Environmental Stewardship Training for both youth and adults. Stewards learned about the environment and how to be leaders and advocates for their neighborhood. The photo on the left is a focus group we conducted to help us design the program. 5 of the adults participating in CREST were trained by FDEP on water quality sampling. They went out once a month with the city's water quality technician to collect pre-restoration samples, and we paid them for this work. One of our goals is to prove that creek restoration improves water quality, and if proven, have the FDEP adopted as a best management practice. Planting a seed. We've been working with the FDEP on this for a while. So Groundwork asked the city and received permission to undertake the creek restoration design. We raised private dollars, hired a firm who are experts in natural channel design in Florida creeks, and totally changed the city's approach to the project. The city viewed it as a stormwater project only, but our design addresses flooding and also improves water quality, creates habitat for fish and wildlife, and proposes ecologically sensitive recreation. We're taking a straightened and hardened creek back to a natural stream, expanding the creek's floodplain by removing a road and acquiring private vacant land. So it's both a resiliency project as well as a habitat restoration project. The city's committed $121 million for the project. There'll be 3 different stream types. At the western end, it will be shallow, narrow, and meandering where kids can actually walk up and play in it. The branches are located again within the 30-acre unused park space, and we also intend to create park spaces and add additional recreational amenities back into the park. As the creek enters the main stem, heading east to the St. Johns River is a series of connected lagoons and wetlands to add storage capacity. The land is very flat here, so there's no power to move the stream. These water bodies are purposely situated so residents can walk down their street to water. At the CSX rail line, it opens up into a 60-foot wide channel all the way to the river, and the creek will be daylighted where it currently is buried underground. And the hot pink line you see here is the Emerald Trail, which follows the creek. Phase 1 is between I-95 and the branches, and that is currently under construction. The branches are ready for construction. We just need to raise the money as it's a Groundwork Jacksonville project. And then phase 2 is moving to 60% design. The private land changed hands and we had to redo the design. It's actually better. And the negotiations with the FDOT and Jacksonville Transportation Authority have been slow. So the design philosophy behind natural channel design is to harness the available forces of nature to provide a self-sustaining corridor within site constraints that will strengthen with time, as opposed to overly prescribing inert countermeasures that only weaken as they weather. Our consultants, Wood PLC, achieved this by synthesizing their knowledge of Florida fluvial geomorphology and stream ecology to achieve resilient results by incorporating natural channel design, bioengineering, and green infrastructure as primary treatments. The result is a design that worked with nature to create restored sinuosity, increased residence time, and subsequent nutrient cycling. And the restored stabilized banks consist of trees and plants that grow stronger over time. It was an iterative and integrated design process with landscape architects and stream engineers and scientists. It's important to both connect people to the creek while also ensuring a self-sustaining design. So it has biophysical features designed as amenities. Continuing to work with nature, the boardwalks provide an opportunity for stormwater to pass under the trail and educate the community about green infrastructure. An activity lawn, the boardwalk over stormwater feature with observation area, provides community access to creek amenities. This plan for the branches area of the creek shows more examples of integrating trail design with creek restoration. We looked for opportunities to improve connectivity throughout the community. The areas in yellow are recreational areas, bringing back what was previously lost. Here's what that plan could look like when implemented in the area of the existing park, located where the branches join to become the main stem. This area has the most room for recreational amenities. The overall focus was on creating a resilient solution for the area. So let's talk about a couple of examples. Flooding will be reduced by creating a more dynamic and ecologically focused stream system. The design increases the volume of the floodplain. We're not increasing the area that floods, but rather increasing the storage for floodwaters within the creek's floodplain. The current creek floods adjacent land during rain and storm surge events, and the proposed design creates an expansive yet shallow floodplain for water to collect, percolate, and drain. As part of the design approach, we considered the stormwater flows into the creek. The stormwater pond we call Broward Pond collects water from the surrounding neighborhood and filters it through a cascade system into the creek floodplain. This is as much a stormwater amenity as it is a year-round wet habitat for wading birds and fish. We needed a way to handle a small volume of water over high relief that was too high for sand to hold together. So rather than a typical drop pipe solution, we looked for how this is handled in nature, which is step pools. In this design, there is biological media in between the rocks, and the system is designed so that the base flow goes through the rocks, not over, providing treatment by scrubbing nitrogen. So on the left is how the pond looks today. And by the way, when they drained it, they found a van at the bottom of the pond, but no people were in it, so that was good. But you can see on the right that we're turning into a beautiful amenity. So in one particular area of the creek, Wood created an interesting feature that works with the variations in the stream power or hydraulic gradient. In this area, there's enough lateral room to dissipate energy and create an upper microtidal environment. During high tides, the light green areas are underwater, and during low tides, these light green areas are dry. The small pools stay wet, and the connections between the pools and the main channel are shallow, which restricts access by predators, and these sheltered limited access areas create a great habitat for young fish. The other thing you see here is biodiversity driven by geodiversity. By incorporating both depressions and islands, the system is more ecologically resilient. So salinity will increase with sea level rise, and long-term adaptive plans for resiliency need to account for that gradient change. Plants were selected that will work now and in the future, understanding that tidal influences mean there is an existing gradient to consider, but also factoring the effects of climate change and how that gradient may shift or change over time. These wetlands are able to float above flood flows that would otherwise rip out plant vegetation. So this is the private land leading to the river where we're not having enough space to do natural channel. So it's going to be bulkheaded on at least one side. We're hoping to get natural channel on the other. Most of the project area enabled us to use naturalistic equivalents in the design, but in areas of high intensity development, we have a need for a novel ecosystem. And even in areas where bulkhead or riprap may be needed due to space constraints and or velocities expected, we are looking to incorporate vegetation and habitat. So I want to show you a few before and afters of the model project that's currently under construction. That was #1 on the trail design. Greening up our urban core is integral to the design of the Emerald Trail. In this image, we're taking a 5-lane road down to 2 lanes of vehicular traffic, which slows vehicular speed, making it safer for walkers and bikes, and then adding a number of trees to make it comfortable for users. So taking a lot of impervious area and making it pervious. This is a city retention pond, and Jacksonville has a lot of them, and most of them are not adding value to the surrounding area because of how they are designed. So where we connect to retention ponds, our goal is to aquascape, the art of adding native plants to a water environment. The city currently relies on chemicals to control weeds and algae. Plants will improve the water quality, protect the shoreline, and provide a habitat and food for wildlife. And we're building a large deck area under the trees, existing trees with benches and swings. Then here we're taking an entire small vacant block for the trail. There are some magnificent live oak trees that we've designed around. We're adding a whole lot more trees and a butterfly garden, as well as a small bioswale. And then underneath the expressway is an opportunity for art to highlight the history of this historic neighborhood. So everywhere we go, we are asked how the Emerald Trail will be maintained. People expect it to be maintained at a high level because we're designing it to be nationally renowned. And later this year, we will have a maintenance agreement in place between Groundwork and the city, identifying the responsibilities of each organization. How we are going to handle maintenance is to recruit, hire, train, and employ residents from the Emerald Trail neighborhoods. They'll be trained and certified on higher level landscape maintenance, such as gardening. So we're both providing jobs and then doing the maintenance that the city would not typically do. So we have also started the Hogan's Creek Restoration Design Project, and we're in the concept phase. We received a grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, the Jacksonville Environmental Protection Board, and private donors. The map on the left shows a meandering Hogan's Creek with access to its floodplain. Just 30 years later, still in the 1800s, you can see that it was straightened. Here's the former meandering stream. And development now is right next to it. So over the years, more and more land was developed, further constraining the creek. And today we have a polluted creek with dilapidated infrastructure, flooding, and that is inaccessible in many places. I think there are like 26 roads and bridges that cross the creek. So it's got a whole lot of constraints. One of the things we're doing in this project is to daylight the creek where it's currently buried under the parking lot through the UF Health campus. And the hospital is totally on board. So they see this as a win-win, bringing the trail and a restored creek onto their campus. And the conceptual design and 30% engineering plans will be completed in April. So the orange outline here identifies the McCoys and Hogan's Creek watersheds. Within the 2 watersheds, there are 218 acres of parks. There are also 638 acres of vacant land, with the city owning 149 of those acres. That gives us an opportunity to add parks in areas where there are none today, and to add green infrastructure throughout the watersheds to improve flooding and to improve water quality before it gets to the creeks and ultimately to the river. Groundwork received a substantial grant from the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity to develop a watershed plan for the 2 watersheds, and we'll be working with 10 neighborhoods over 2 years to develop the plan. Our focus will be on identifying green infrastructure solutions, although we also will identify gray infrastructure needs, and our electric and water utility in the city will be part of our steering committee. The Emerald Trail stewards I mentioned earlier will be trained and certified in green infrastructure implementation as well. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Kay. That was great, and a great look at some efforts that are underway and hopefully starting soon. So thank you very much. I do just want to mention there was one comment about from Wayne, says that I believe floating wetlands are an excellent environmental measure. There was a concern earlier in the chat box also about children playing in the waterway there. And Wayne says that is a legitimate concern, but there are fewer instances of accidental drowning in open, accessible environments like creeks, banks, or swales, rather than in retention ponds.
So, and I know I grew up next to a creek, and it's, you know, it's really shallow, so that's why we think it'll be safer there.
Absolutely. So thank you, Kay. If you have any questions, hold them till the end. We do have one more speaker. Give Give me just one second here. So our next speaker is Nathan Jagoda. Nathan works at the Florida Department of Environmental Protection in the Non-Point Source Management Program, where he acts as the education coordinator and manages projects that improve water quality across the state. He is passionate about helping to encourage local governments to increase implementation of green infrastructure and providing outreach to Florida residents about how they can reduce personal pollution. Nathan has an MA in applied sociology from the University of Central Florida. So Nathan, I will pass it back over to you and we'll get started with your presentation.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction, Abby. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about a few initiatives that we have going on here in the Division of Water Restoration Assistance Non-Point Source Management section at FDEP. I'm going to talk to you about a few of our GSI initiatives, our new website that we're working on. We have a publication tool, a few pilot projects, and then I'll also go over a few funding opportunities that we have. We've recently developed several GSI resources here in the non-point section.
Nathan,
and we
just a quick interruption. We don't see your slides. Or I don't see your slides.
Yeah. How's that? Better? Okay, awesome. Sorry about that, everyone. Okay, yeah. So as I mentioned, here in the non-point section, we recently developed several GSI resources. And we also have two main grants that we allocate out each year, which are our SWAG grants and our 319 grants, combined around $8 million per year. And I will go over those in 1 second. Just having a little trouble changing my slide right now. There we go. Okay. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to go through is our new GSI website, which we just recently dropped a few weeks ago. Some of you might be familiar. We have been sharing it quite a bit. So yeah, we're really excited on it. We were working on it for a few years and it's finally here. So we're really excited to share with everyone. So just to we view green stormwater infrastructure as an awesome option for water treatment and flood control, as it allows us to treat stormwater at its source and use the natural landscape to prevent flooding by mimicking and enabling Earth's natural processes. Several types of GSI that are common in Florida include rain gardens, bioswales, permeable pavers, bioretention cells, and tree boxes. And this website that we're working on is basically our attempt at consolidating Florida-related GSI resources in one place so that folks are able to go here, and it's kind of a one-stop shop to get everything you need for Florida green stormwater infrastructure. So we have a section that goes over GSI basics, what is GSI and common types. We have a resources section, which I'll be going over in a little bit. We also have a community engagement section, which I'll also be going over. We have a map within which we're displaying success stories. So projects throughout the state that have successfully implemented green stormwater infrastructure. And in that map, we have resources related to those projects, such as contact information, design plans, so you can get a feel for what it took to make that project happen. We also have information on the funding that was needed to complete the project. So it's a great idea to look at that to kind of compare different projects and what they take to make happen, both in the planning side as well as funding. And if you'd like to reach out to the folks who created those projects, we have contact information as well. And if you'd like to view this website, the link is just gsi.floridadep.gov. And what you're seeing here is an image of the homepage. So now I'm going to go into our resources page on that website a little bit more. We have two sections, which are technical resources and then our EPA resources. And we're also working on adding a local and regional resources section that'll be more tailored to different regions in Florida, which will allow us to kind of, display guidance documents and resources that are more applicable to each region. So in our general section, we have GSI info manuals from UF, as well as our publication tool, which is another initiative that we're working on, which I'll be sharing a little bit about later on. In our design section, we have some LID planning and design manuals, our GSI plant guide, and a GSI modeling tool. And then in our maintenance section, we have GIBMP certification with Florida Friendly Landscaping. We have GSI maintenance training with Florida Friendly Landscaping as well. We have a healthy pond certification with UF and a GSI maintenance manual from UF. And hearing about your project, Kay, it sounds like some of these trainings might be useful for the project that you're working on. And then moving on to our EPA resources. Here we have some resources from EPA, such as the permitting and enforcement series that they offer, a GI and LID presentation that they offer. And then we also have various documents such as barrier breaking advice, kind of common barriers that folks will run into when trying to implement green stormwater infrastructure and ways around those. We have some resources on the aesthetic components of green stormwater infrastructure, encouraging benefits. We have some information on costs, maintenance, terminology. There's a lot of good stuff that EPA has. So we've consolidated that all under one section. And then, as I mentioned, we're working on adding a local and regional resources section that'll kind of break things up by region in Florida to make it a little bit easier to find what you're looking for depending on where you're located. So now I'm going to talk about our community engagement section a little bit. So this section pretty much consists of methods that can be used to gain support of municipal staff, elected officials, developers, the business community, and the general public. And these are pretty much tips to help keep stakeholder priorities and interests in mind when you're working to implement or gain approval for a green stormwater infrastructure project. So each section kind of goes into key interests that these stakeholders might have in relation to GSI. So just for an example, we have under our city and county leadership, why does GSI matter to those folks, how it can help the city, economy, neighborhoods, etc. Costs of GSI, performance. So really a way to engage these different stakeholders and a kind of a one-stop shop where you can see what concerns each of these groups may have and the best way to approach them. And now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the publication tool that I mentioned earlier. So this can be found on our website, on the GSI website. And the publication tool is a free tool that municipalities can use to create various types of messaging related to non-point source pollution and stormwater. So what it does is provide easy to edit templates that contain preloaded DEP approved messaging. And then this messaging can be customized to represent municipalities' needs. And we have messaging available in both English and Spanish. So what you're seeing here is, let's see if I can get my mouse over to that screen. Okay, there we go. So what we're seeing here is just a screenshot from the publication tool. And here is the publication that's being created. This is an example of a social media post. Let's see if I can get my mouse. My mouse is bouncing across all my different screens I have open here. So 1 second. Oh. Okay. I keep switching slides now. So yeah, we have different types of publications within the publication tool. So using this tool, you can create door hangers, flyers, palm cards, posters, and social media posts. And what you're seeing here is an example of a social media post. So yeah, we have messaging topics that include Florida friendly landscaping, septic systems, Florida water resources, and stormwater, of course. And basically what you'll do within the tool, you'll select the type of medium you want. So whether it be a door hanger, flyer, palm card, you'll also select a topic, and then you'll see on the left here, you'll be preloaded with different options of language that you can use, which is all DEP approved. So you can kind of customize how you want the how you want it to look, and then you also select a photo. So it's very customizable. There are spaces for you to input your municipality name, your organization name, whatever it may be using, and it's all free of charge. So it's a really good resource to be able to spread awareness about different issues, promote Florida-friendly landscaping in your area, and really just spread awareness to issues, and get it all in one place is what we're really happy about. That you're able to do this as a one-stop shop, kind of cover these different topics and these different formats that you may need. And again, that can be found on the website, which is gsi.floridadep.gov. And then moving on to talk a little bit about some of the GSI pilot projects that we funded. These were pretty recently funded by us. We have a little pilot project series that we're working on. So with the city of Pensacola, we're doing some bioretention areas with native plantings. With the city of Hawthorne, we're doing a treatment train of rain gardens. With the city of Cocoa Beach, we're doing bioretention areas with BAM and native plantings. And then in the city of Melbourne, we're doing some exfiltration landscape boxes with engineered soil media. And Martin County, we're doing some tree boxes with engineered soil media. And then our main goal with this is to collect some good data on how these examples of GSI are operating. So we're doing effectiveness monitoring with the University of Florida, who are going to be monitoring the projects for around 2 years after their construction to get some solid numbers on how they're functioning. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about some funding opportunities that we have, which some of y'all might be familiar with. I'm going to go over 2 grant types that we allocate, which are our 319 grants, which come from EPA, and then our SWAG grants, which come from the state. So first, I'm going to talk about our EPA grant, our 319 grant. So it's a federal grant through the US EPA, and its eligible projects include construction, education, and monitoring. There is a match requirement, generally around 40%, but sometimes that can be negotiated and changed. It's for slightly less than shovel-ready projects, just because there is a bit of time in between award allocation and proposal review. So there is a bit longer of a timeline. And planning and design are eligible to be used as part of that match. And then, sorry about that. And then as you can see, it can take 2 years to receive the actual grant award. So maybe a little bit pre-shovel ready projects. So eligible here are water quality improvements, groundwater protection, water quality restoration, stormwater BMPs, education projects related to non-point source pollution, and septic to sewer projects as well. And with both of our funding options, we're extremely eager to fund some GSI projects wherever we can. And then now I'll talk a little bit about our SWAG grant. So that stands for our State Water Quality Assistance Grant. And obviously this one comes from the state. So this is a state grant for projects that reduce stormwater pollutant loadings in impaired water bodies. This grant is more appropriate for shovel-ready projects that are pretty much ready to go upon award. There isn't a required match, but having a match will always help your case when it comes to receiving funding. There is no monitoring required here, but again, having that monitoring component will probably look a little better on the application and increase your chances of gaining funding. And then, as I mentioned, it's a bit faster application to grant award date. So those more shovel-ready projects. So here again, it's water quality improvement projects, groundwater protection, water quality restoration, BMPs, and reuse. And again, very excited to fund GSI projects when we're able to. And if you're interested in submitting a proposal, we do accept our proposals throughout the year. You can reach out to Emily Fornash, who will be happy to talk over any questions that you might have with you and provide you with the forms you need to apply. Her email is listed here on this slide. So we do April of each year available. We will sometimes contact Emily and fill out a proposal. You can apply for both of them using the same proposal. So you could apply for 319 and swag and see which one you might get. And yeah, again, if you have any questions, just reach out to Emily and she would be happy to help you. You could talk about eligible grant components, funding availability, match, really whatever it might be. She is very knowledgeable and happy to help. And then just to close out, we like to always highlight a successful project that we've had. And this is a great example of one. This is a Tavares stormwater park. So this was really a good example of how we've had a grantee kind of leverage different DEP funding sources to make an awesome project happen. Overall, it's a pretty extensive project that included drainage improvements, a treatment drain pond system, public education, a section of pervious pavers, and pervious parking lot. So this is kind of a breakdown of how they use those funds. So they use some 319, as you can see, for some of the education, as well as the pervious parking lot. They use some swag in there. They got a legislative appropriation. And then they use some of our TMDL category, which is now swag. They just switched the name. And then they also use the state revolving loan, which is an opportunity that I didn't really touch on here just for a matter of time. But we do have the state revolving loan program, which can provide low interest loans to help with match or overall project funding. So yeah, just a really good example of how they kind of pulled all this together. And the park does a lot of great things, treats stormwater, provides flood control, provides some green stormwater infrastructure elements, and some education to teach the community about what is going on at the park. And since they've installed the park, they've had great business boom around it. The amenity is being used quite a bit. And I believe they're adding some biomats and littoral plantings. So yeah, so just a great way that a grantee has, combined a lot of different elements of a project and a lot of different funding to make something really cool happen. And then just to end, if you have any questions again about our grants, please contact Emily Fornash. Her email is here. And then if you have any questions about the GSI website or publication tool, you can just email our general email, which is nonpointsource@floridadep.gov. And we're happy to help with any questions, be it about projects, funding, the resources that we have, really anything. We're happy to help out and try to make you able to create some cool projects. And that's about all I have. I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Nathan, so much for that great presentation.
Yeah, let me just unshare. Oh, I did. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd like to give a virtual round of applause for both of our speakers today. Thank you so much. And so we have about 14 or so minutes left in our time here for questions. I don't see any in the chat box, but I do see that we have a raised hand. If you would like to come off mute, we can go ahead and take your question.
I think you have several of us. Shall I start? First of all, compliments to the presenters. Brilliant stuff, really inspiring. Thank you for all of that. And my question is, I'm wondering, I live in Atlantic Beach and wonder if you've worked closer to the ocean. So there are a number of areas here that are facing challenges, and I see Steve Swan is on, and probably a question he would know much more about, but just curious if you've worked closer to the ocean.
Thank you, Dan. Is your question for Kay or Nathan or both?
Both.
Okay, great. Kay, why don't you start and then Nathan will hop over to you.
The answer is no. We are solely focused on the urban core with our project at this point. Steve Swan, though, is on our board.
And then
Lucky-
on the
lucky you.
Thanks, Kay.
Yeah, and then on the DEP side, the answer would be yes. We have projects all throughout the state. We do a lot of work with the Indian River Lagoon. Definitely in BMAP areas are where I'd say a majority of our projects are located. But you know, we're everywhere. We have projects in Miami. We have projects all across the state, in state and on the coast. So we're all over the place for sure.
Thank you. Great question. Kelly Smith, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I have some questions about the retention ponds. And so this in part relates to the example, Nathan, that you showed of the retention pond features and all of the lovely turf grass coming down to the edge of the ponds. And, you know, I have some grave concerns about that type of design. And I'm wondering, is there an emphasis for better vegetation use? Because I think most of us know that turf grass is kind of the antichrist in vegetation. And so, you know, I think that Kay has, you know, used a lot of natural vegetation stuff, but does DEP advise perhaps the use of other plant species rather than turf grass in most of their designs?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the resources that we're working on is with Dr. Eben Bean out of the University of Florida, and it's actually a plant guide. I believe that's Eben's project. Could be crisscrossing, but yeah. So we have a green stormwater infrastructure plant guide that provides guidance on appropriate plantings within the state to try to limit that extensive turf grass use, to use appropriate plants, Florida appropriate plants in these ponds where we're able to. Definitely, we are big on encouraging that. And that's one thing we're really excited about our website. We're hoping that it will hopefully lead folks to find these resources and implement them. And as well as we have a few trainings on that resources tab that go over plantings. And we also, another project we have going is a GSI BMP training and guidance certs. I don't know what you would call it, but I guess just kind of guidance series. So basically we'll provide GSI guidance to BMP installers and maintainers to help them, you know, properly maintain these projects. A lot of those plantings take a bit of maintenance to prevent, you know, overgrowth or overpopulation, whatever it may be. But yeah, so we're definitely working on some documents, and we are big on encouraging using, you know, Florida friendly and kind of the appropriate plantings in our ponds for sure.
Can I just add to that? I think that what we find here with the city is that that's what their preference. So they can just mow it, right? Because that's typically what they do, and they don't really know how to care for the other stuff. So I think that's probably their go-to solution, which we're working to change here.
Yeah, and hopefully.
I just wanted to say, I think that's really a crucial part of the equation is changing mindsets, because honestly, the mow and blow mindset is very wasteful of fossil fuels too. And so I'm glad to hear that there's some push back towards the usual turf grass application.
Yeah, Kay, and you mentioned that maintenance, the kind of easy maintenance there with the grass, and that's one thing that we're hoping these resources can be used to kind of educate on how to properly maintain the more appropriate plantings, and how it's not necessarily the most complicated thing, that it can be done. So yeah, we're really hoping that these resources will encourage folks to, one, implement them, and then be able to maintain them and see that it's not really this thing to be scared of, hopefully.
Yes, great point, Nathan. Thank you. There any additional questions? We have a few more minutes left. I'll leave it open. You're more than welcome to either raise your virtual hand or unmute yourself or add it to the chat box.
Oh, okay.
Kelly, since you're unmuted, I'll pass it to you first.
Okay, yeah, one of my comments again comes back to this vegetation and retention ponds, and the fact that retention ponds don't function like wetlands, and I think Kay's addressed some of that through the floating mats and the vegetation, but I want to make sure that there's some sort of assessment that nutrients coming from the ground are actually being captured. And so what is the methods through which we're going to be evaluating the function of that restoration?
Are you talking about our restoration?
Yes.
McCoy's Creek?
Yeah.
Well, so we've done pre-restoration sampling. And then once the restoration's done, we're doing post-restoration sampling. Our consultant is finalizing a design study for us to be able to do that. And we want to be able to prove that it's, the natural stuff is working. So that's kind of how we are intending to look at that. And then we also our consultants are providing kind of a maintenance plan for just how we maintain the newly restored creek. And like I said, we're going to be helping the city with that.
And I know I showed those pilot projects and we kind of had a variety of different projects, but that's another goal that we have, is to kind of get some data, some monitoring data on these different types of projects moving forward.
Awesome, thank you. Farah, I'll pass it over to you for our last question of the day, and then I have a few last minute housekeeping things. Go ahead and ask your question.
Sure, I just have a quick question. It's not really related to resiliency, but I was curious, Kay, about your project. Are there going to be kayak launches that are included in this, or is that there will be? Okay, great.
Yep.
All right, that's all I had.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, presenters. Thank you for your wonderful presentations. We had a great discussion on the efforts in the city of Jacksonville, and some great insight from Nathan and the non-point source program at DEP. I did put the GSI website, the Green Stormwater Infrastructure website, in the chat box if you're interested. I can also put a link to it in the email that goes out with our recording link. So this recording will be available online. I will send out another email as soon as it is processed and ready. Before I let you all go, I'm going to launch just a quick poll here. And that helps us with our important feedback from you all, to make sure that we are making these webinars a good use of your time, and that you're learning a lot about the regional and local resiliency efforts in our area. While you are all doing the survey here, I will mention that our next webinar will be on Tuesday, March 15th. We will have a couple speakers from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to talk about the South Atlantic Coastal Study. Registration for that webinar will open probably 2 or 3 weeks prior to the event. So keep an eye out for another email from me. And if you have any questions, any additional questions for our speakers today, you can either email me directly and I will pass them along, or Kay and Nathan, if you want to pop your emails into the chat box to make that available for our audience as well. But if you have completed our poll, thank you very much. And with that, I will go ahead and sign off, and I will hang here for a few extra minutes if anyone has any additional questions for me or either of our speakers. But thank you all for joining us today.